The problem with casting Dracula. Historically, Dracula has rarely been miscast in terms of talent. He has almost always been miscast in terms of intention. For over a century, the role has attracted performers who radiate control, authority, confidence, a kind of theatrical command that fills the frame before the character ever speaks. These portrayals have trained audiences to expect Dracula as a figure of dominance first and emotion second, a ruler of darkness, a master of seduction, an aristocrat whose power is expressed through posture, certainty, and intimidation. Even the most celebrated versions of the character lean heavily into this tradition. Dracula enters a room and owns it. He speaks with assurance. He moves with elegance. His menace is rooted in strength, not fragility. His seduction is polished. His danger is deliberate. This approach makes sense when Dracula is treated as a symbol of conquest, when the story frames him as an invader, a corrupter, a force that acts upon others rather than a being acted upon by time, memory, and loss. But this approach also limits the character. It reduces him to surface qualities, power, charisma, sexual magnetism. These versions prioritize control over cost. They focus on what Dracula does to others rather than what eternity has done to him. Dracula. A love tale is not interested in that version of the myth. This film does not ask what it would be like to encounter Dracula. It asks what it would be like to be him, to live inside the endless echo of a single loss, to remain alive long after meaning has eroded, to exist not as a conqueror, but as someone trapped in repetition. That shift changes everything. A Dracula built around dominance requires an actor who can project certainty. A Dracula built around grief requires an actor who can survive uncertainty on screen. Someone who does not fill silence with charm. Someone who allows emptiness to remain visible. This version of Dracula does not need a commanding presence. It needs a wounded one. It needs an actor who can carry stillness without performing it, who can let absence speak, who can embody a man hollowed out by memory rather than empowered by immortality. Which raises a difficult question. If this Dracula is not a conqueror, not a ruler, not a figure of control, then what kind of actor could possibly carry him? What this Dracula actually needed emotionally. Dracula. A love tale is structured around emotion rather than spectacle. Its gravity does not come from fear, but from longing, from devotion that has nowhere left to go, from a man suspended in the aftermath of a love that time could not resolve. This Dracula is not defined by hunger alone. He is defined by memory, by faith that has curdled into obsession, by a grief that never completes its cycle because immortality removes the possibility of closure. Psychologically, this is not a character who moves forward. He circles, he repeats, he waits. He is a lover trapped in a loop, a being whose identity has collapsed inward around absence. Everything he does is shaped by what is no longer there. That emotional architecture demands a very specific type of performance. This Dracula must feel unfinished, exposed, as though something essential has been taken from him and never replaced. He cannot appear fully armored. He cannot feel resolved. He must look like a man whose inner life is leaking through the surface at all times. Traditional leading men are trained to prevent that. They are taught to protect their image, to project confidence even in vulnerability, to shape emotion into something legible and attractive, to signal strength even when portraying pain. That instinct would destroy this role. A confident Dracula would shift the story into fantasy. A polished Dracula would turn grief into aesthetics. An emotionally protected Dracula would make the love feel symbolic rather than consuming. This character requires an actor willing to look incomplete on screen, someone who does not resolve emotion for the audience, someone who allows discomfort to linger. Most actors are trained to avoid exactly that. They are trained to control the frame, to manage their presence, to reassure the viewer that everything is intentional and contained. This Dracula needs the opposite. He needs someone who can appear as though they might come apart if pressed, someone whose emotional center feels fragile rather than fortified, which narrows the field dramatically. Caleb Landry Jones and the Art of Emotional Exposure. Caleb Landry Jones is not a star in the traditional sense. He does not enter a film carrying ease. He enters carrying risk. Across his career, what defines his work is not range in the conventional sense, but exposure. His performances do not feel constructed so much as uncovered. There is a sense that something private has been brought too close to the surface. He does not perform emotion as an idea. He allows it to exist in his body. Physically, he collapses inward rather than expanding outward. His posture often suggests retreat. His shoulders fold. His movements hesitate, as though each action must pass through doubt before becoming real. His eye contact is uncertain. He looks away. He looks through. He allows silence to sit uncomfortably between himself and the camera. This creates a presence that is unsettling because it refuses reassurance. Caleb does not smooth emotion into clarity. He lets it remain jagged, incomplete, sometimes contradictory. His characters often feel like open wounds rather than finished portraits. You do not observe them from a safe distance. You feel their instability in real time. This kind of presence is rare because it is dangerous. It risks alienating the audience. It risks making viewers uncomfortable. It risks being misunderstood. Most actors are taught to soften those edges. Caleb does not. He does not play dominance. He plays fracture. And fracture is precisely what this Dracula requires. This version of the character cannot be held together by elegance or authority. He must feel like a man held together by memory alone, barely functioning, existing because stopping would mean surrendering the last connection to what he lost. Caleb's stillness is not confidence. It is containment, a quiet effort to keep something from breaking open. That discomfort is not a flaw. It is the engine of the performance, and it is why the role could not be cast traditionally. Why no other actor could have done this? There is a temptation in casting Dracula to look for authority first, to search for an actor whose presence alone suggests power, someone whose face implies command before a word is spoken, someone who can make menace feel effortless. That instinct has shaped the role for decades, and in most versions, it works because the story needs it to. It does not work here. Dracula: A Love Tale is not sustained by dominance. It is sustained by emotional exposure. Any actor who arrives with confidence fully intact immediately breaks the illusion. The character cannot appear in control of himself. He cannot look settled inside his immortality. Actors known for power would tilt the story toward spectacle. Actors known for seduction would turn grief into style. Actors known for elegance would aestheticize suffering instead of inhabiting it. Even a highly skilled performer with traditional leading man instincts would fail for reasons that have nothing to do with talent. Their training would betray them. They would protect the character too much. They would unconsciously stabilize him. That stability would erase the tragedy. A more conventionally attractive or assured actor would invite fascination instead of empathy. The audience would admire Dracula rather than feel implicated in his suffering. The story would become fantasy instead of loss. This film cannot survive that shift. The emotional center depends on the viewer recognizing something human before something supernatural. It depends on seeing grief before danger, obsession before power. This is not a role that rewards command. It punishes it. What the character requires is not polish, but permeability. Not presence, but exposure. Not confidence, but vulnerability that never resolves into comfort. That is not a question of skill alone. It is a question of temperament. This role required an actor willing to appear unprotected on screen, willing to let uncertainty remain visible, willing to let discomfort speak louder than performance. There are very few actors capable of that, fewer still willing. Caleb Landry Jones is one of them. Caleb Landry Jones as a psychological match for this Dracula. The alignment between Caleb Landry Jones and this version of Dracula is not superficial. It is psychological. On screen, Caleb often carries a sense of detachment that feels internal rather than performative. He appears present, but not fully anchored, as though part of him is elsewhere, watching, remembering. That mirrors the internal state of this Dracula, a being who exists in time but does not belong to it, who moves through the world without fully participating in it, who observes life rather than living it. There is quiet suffering in Caleb's performances that does not ask for sympathy. It simply exists. It is not dramatized. It is not explained. It lingers. That restraint is crucial. Immortality in this film is not glamorous. It is destabilizing. It erodes meaning. It fractures identity. Caleb's unpredictability as a performer reflects that instability. You are never entirely sure where the character is emotionally, or whether he will hold together. That uncertainty creates tension without spectacle. Just as important is what Caleb does not do. He resists romanticization. He does not soften pain to make it appealing. He does not aestheticize grief. His vulnerability is not decorative. As a result, the romance in this film feels earned. It emerges from absence and longing rather than fantasy. Love is not an ideal here. It is a wound that refuses to close. Because Caleb never idealizes the character, the audience does not either. They feel his humanity first. His monstrosity arrives later, almost reluctantly. This inversion is everything. By allowing Dracula to feel human before monstrous, the film restores emotional weight to the myth. The supernatural becomes a consequence, not a feature. That effect is only possible because the actor refuses to protect the character from himself. Caleb does not impose control. He allows collapse. And in that collapse, the character finally makes sense. Why this casting will redefine Dracula for a new generation. Audiences today are less impressed by dominance than they once were. Power no longer fascinates the way vulnerability does. Certainty feels less compelling than emotional truth. Modern Gothic romance understands this shift. The genre no longer survives on spectacle alone. It survives on intimacy, on internal conflict, on characters who feel psychologically legible, even when their circumstances are not. Dracula, a love tale, belongs to that evolution. By casting Caleb Landry Jones, the film rejects a century of inherited assumptions about what Dracula must be. It reframes the character not as an icon of control, but as a study in unresolved grief. This is not Dracula as ruler. It is Dracula as a relic, as someone who has outlived meaning and cannot let go of what once defined him. That version of the myth could not exist through a dominant performance. It required an actor willing to disappear into loss, willing to let the role hollow him out rather than elevate him. Caleb Landry Jones was not simply the right choice. He was the only choice. Not because he is the most charismatic, not because he is the most recognizable, but because he understands something essential. That true horror does not come from power. It comes from love that refuses to end. If you enjoy psychological movie deep dives like this, late-night film reflections, and strange flick facts that look beyond the surface, take a moment to like and subscribe to Strange Flick Facts. It helps the channel grow and allows this kind of work to continue. Some stories linger not because they are loud, but because they are honest. This Dracula will linger for exactly that reason.